So let's review the Maimah so far. So the Maimah brought from the Zohar that the final bracha is Koslo all the brachas. The final bracha has 10 expressions of simcha, which correspond to, as he explains the Zohar, the 10 Sfiras L'mayla. And the Zohar makes a reference to the lower 10 and the upper 10. So there's 3 tens. There's the 10 brachas, 10 expressions of simcha in the bracha. That includes in it, according to Zohar now, the 10 dibris. The Zohar just says the upper and the lower. So it means the 10 dibris and the Asara Memoris. And then it concludes that Zakoyin Yidin Yisrael, meritorious Ayidin, that they merited to be the Sata Keneged La'ela. Down here, paralleling above, which means what we do down here, he says, is Mamshech Alikos in the highest world. So there's 2 shilas of the Maimah. One shaila is, this is an Inyan Klali, Torah mitzvahs b'chlal, so why is it associated after with Chas and Kala? And he answers that immediately because Chas and Kala are Eivishter and Knesset Yisrael. So through, moreover, okay, we'll just more detail. Eden and the Eivishter, Matan Torah, which is daily, is the chasam of Eden and the Eibishter, which is why it's Moishe not Torah in the present, which is why the Eibishter now is Koira v'Shena Kenegdoi. Now the Rebbe adds, it's mamish like Matan Torah when the Yid learns Torah, and that's why we have to learn Torah with the same dread and so on, the 4 expressions of Ema, Yira, Reses, V'Zeya, as was originally, and that corresponds to Yudke Vavke, which was the Gili of Matan Torah. And he goes on to say, okay, so through Torah, what have we prayed? We prayed that the world should be killed because. So that's the inyan of the Asar Mamoros being connected to Asar Sadibris. The Zohar on the Pasuk, Asara, Asara, Kaf, B'Shekel HaKodesh, that each golden spoon weighed 10 shekel, and it says, describing each spoon, saying the word Asara twice. So Remes to Asar Mamoros and Asar Sadibris. Then the Rebbe says, Yesh Loima, that the Asar Mamoros Shokol, the parallel, the Kavanah is each one pales in the other one. It's obvious that Asar Sadibris pale in the world. Istakol Baraisa Bara Alma. But the same is also true the other way. That the Avodah down here in the, as he calls the Asara Maimoris, million dead Yoita, common words, as the Zohar describes the Asara Maimoris. So this is Payel in Asara Sadibris, and he brings in the square brackets. There's a pirush that in fact, Asara Maimoris are higher than Asara Sadibris. What's the Indian that down here, Lamata, the Payel in Torah and Aliyah in Torah? That is, that Elyonim come to the Chedush Torah down here. Chavein Makshivim L'Keilach, Neivish Setem Malach Yashoris, and other medrash. You're asking me what the din is. Let's go to the Beis Shemat and find out. So likewise, Chasen and Kala, that even though Chasen and Kala so there as a nishtalshel lamata, that's he says imayos, even though this is the second paragraph, no, the third. The last paragraph of his base. So Chasan Kala, even though the Chasan Kala down here, Amishtalshin from Chasan Kala Lamaila, which is on Malchus, and higher still, Eidin Sof Shifnei Tzimtzum and the Kav being Malchus or Kala, and the Eidin Sof being Zad Mashpia, and even higher than that Lifnei Tzimtzum doesn't go to Protim, it's Erakvul, Pligvul, Esas Filas Aknuzas, so on. Nonetheless, so even though the Imayos says this, that even though Chas Kala down here are far removed from the sources, as he traces it back further and further, even if that's Tzimtzum, nonetheless, it's through the Alderach that we said before, down the Mata here with Peil Ali and Torah, likewise, the Aved of Chas Kala Lamata, the Mamshech, Teis V'S'Eir, in all of the Madrigas of Chas Kala Lamaila, even Lifnei Tzimtzum. Just like Torah mitzvahs is prayer, the Yichad Kuchabicha Shchinte Lamaila. Okay, General Akdom. Now is Gimel. Now comes two questions. What are the questions? Number one, having said now the Chas and the Kala in their Sheidesh, the Penimius, which is what this Baruch is expressing, everything. Are even lift that symptoms. How can we say? Oh, that was the second question. Okay, Bara Chas and Vakala. First question was why Sas and Simcha appears before Chas and Vakala in the Seder in the Bracha. The whole point is there's Chas and Kala, and they were obligated to bring them, and we are giving them and blessing them and giving them these 10 expressions of Simcha. But it's very strange. We say Sas and Simcha, then the second shaila is Bara. How can we say Bria on Chas and Vakala? And even if we're going to trace it back to the immediate source, which is Svidus Amalchus of Atzilus, but Svidus Amalchus is not part of Bria. It's all part of Lamaila. It's Mashlin Besvidus, Anoche Shalume Amune Yisrael. The pasuk he brings there, which is implying to I complete Lashon Shleimus, the faithfulness of Yidden. I complete the divine expression, and obviously Chas and Kala higher than Zoh is a Vada higher than the Inyan of Bria. So how can we say Bara Asher Bara Chas and Kala? This is the Shadi Defidi Rabasks in his mind Mitafresh Beitas. To answer that, he prefaces a similar question, but even a greater question. The pasuk says the Fanai Le Noitzar Keil. So the pasuk is making an association here between Shem Keil and Noitzar, formation. How can you say Yitzira, associate Yitzira with Shem Keil? It's one of Hashem's holy names. And this is a bigger question before, because Yitzira is lower than Bria. So the answer is, we're looking at the last paragraph now of Ois Gimel. The answer is, as explained in the Maamer, that no, Shem Kel is Shaykh L'Oilamus. That's the bottom line. Since it's a Shaykhis, we can already say Yitzir. But he's Mevai B'Protius. Because what Shem Kel is Chesed. And Chesed, the whole creation, Ki Amarti, Oilam Chesed Yibane. Which means the whole creation is through the Sfiras HaChesed. And moreover, means two things. Yes, A and B, that the building of Sfiras HaChesed itself, why does God give rise to Sfiras HaChesed? It's all in order to create Oilamus. It's not exactly the same thing. It's one thing to say that the Oilamus come from Sfiras HaChesed, but that could also mean that Chesed has its own thing, which is completely higher than Shachas to Oilamus. And it would exist even if there wouldn't be Oilamus. No, the second point is that Chesed only exists in order that there should be Binyan Oilamus. And therefore you can say, on Shem Keil, he's answering the second question first, Loshin Yitzira, because there's this intrinsic association. Yitzira is the next stage in Bria, formation, but it all starts from intrinsically, and that's only why Chesed is there, is that there should be a Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. Therefore you can say Yitzira even by associate Yitzira with Chesed. In other words, like the artist that produces the art that he produces is present within him, not the canvas, not the paint, not the actual picture, but that talent is hardwired within the artist. Chesed is already a hardwired madrege v'likus that Hashem gives rise to in order to produce Eilamus. Could be talking. We're just thinking that as you're saying it. You know, even the bigger chiddush. Lo Yedea. Only as if, and the answer would be is that it's implied already. If you say Yitzida, that's what it means, I see it. But still, the question is, say I see it, it's even a bigger chiddush. Unless I see it also means I see Gashmis. Now, Gashmis is different. Gashmis is Yesh Ma'ayin, and Gashmis is Rudutak and Atzmos. The Chayis Ruchni that's in Gashmis, and the properties, that's Mitzad Ishtalshalos. Maybe that's the answer. Because I see it could mean two things. I see Ruchni, I see Gashmi. It also means I see Gashmi. And that's Takanot. It's Taka, separate Indian is the whole separate additional Chidush drawing on Atzmos to create Yeshmayim. Maybe. Okay. So having said that, so likewise, Menegei Chasen V'Kala, we're going to answer why we lose the Lashon Bria. Because Chasen is Melashon Chus Darga, which means to lessen a level. He pointed out in the Ha'odah, Bachlal uses the Lashon Nachais Darga, which means to descend. The Gemara said the person should always marry someone below him in stature, in social stature, although she won't respect him. And he'll fall apart if she doesn't respect him. So you got to make sure you looked up to him. Anyway, whatever the beard of it is, B'pnimius, but the Lashon there is Nechois or Nochas, to descend. But the Rebbe says in out of 52 here that the Maimon Peites uses this Lashon, Chus Darga. It's a little bit, has to be addressed because Chosin is the same Moishe as Nechois. So the association is kind of clearer. Here it's not. It's not so simple. It's only the Ches and the Sof, which may be the root letters. I don't know. At any rate, the point is that Chosin is also implicit that the word Chosin is what, even though it's Zoh, but the idea of descent. He adds in the square brackets. And even though Malchus is Bachlala, directly the Sherish Makar of Biyah, Malchus is the word, the divine word that creates. Whereas Zoh, Bachlal is, relatively speaking, is defined as the end of the Olam Ein Sof. Nonetheless, the Prati is relative to Malchus. But the bigger picture, it's Chus Darga. It's Yerida. Why is there a Zoh? In order there should be a Bria, there should be a Malchus and a Bria. So therefore, hardwired there too, in potential at least, is the Inyan of Bria. Okay, that's the general answer. Dalet now begins the heart of the Maim in the sense to explain it. Yeah, we're following. Actually, physically following the flow here of the text. Okay, so Bira Inyan. It's known that the Sibba, the cause of Brias Olam, and all of Ishtal Shalos is the Chesed Shabbat in Sof. We're soon going to define what that means. And that is, right, the third line there. What's the Inyan of Chesed is Klolos Inyan Hagili. This is what we need to get clear. Chesed has many levels. There's Chesed as it emerges, Lamata with the actual form of bestowal. Now, why of kindness and the Achlasas Orchim, whatever it is? That's because as the further down you go and the Nivra starts to emerge, get that Nivra. So what does he need? He needs this, and the other. So Chesed will give that. That's already a specific. What should the Makabel get? The further down you go, the more defined the Chesed is. That Chesed Leid in Sof is that the Bechlal should be a gather of Makabel. Inyan Agilu, the notion that the otherness that will receive the truth, whatever, will receive Ashpah. Inyan Agilu. That's what Chesed is in its purest form. Again, as we mentioned, that's why the first day of creation, each day corresponds to, right? Each day of creation, David employs another midas. The first day was Oir. And Chesed even asked the question, why was the Oir created? You need Oir to illuminate something. Nothing was created yet. Why Oir? First you create, then illuminate. But the answer is because there's many answers. One of the answers here is that Geder Oir, that the first day, the whole notion of revelation through otherness is manifest, and then the otherness starts to happen. It's the Tzimtzum and Sfiris to all the way down to Elamas. Right, so the page. Hier brings mit Tzemach Tzedek and it's Shimis Antilim on the Pasuk in Kapitel Nun. Moishe, I'm going to ask you to hit number 6. Just pick up the receiver and hit 6. Please, thank you.
That this said way before spirits and but that was just saying that chesed is that first notion of expression.
That's what chesed means, that it's shorish. Chesed, it's shorish, is that.
So I'm not talking about like chesed of Atzilus.
No, chesed of Atzilus already has tremendous seers. And, chesed of Atzilus is replaced by Avram. All the things Avram did, that's what chesed of Atzilus does. It's already, tailored to a real makabel that has emerged with real needs. Whereas chesed, that in itself is the inyan of the makabel. Be a makabel and be mashpah. It's all potential. It's all, again, the notion of otherness is given rise to, and that the otherness will be the recipient, the beneficiary of elikus. That gather. What the otherness yet, that point is, if we're looking at it in itself, what's it going to be, that otherness? Absolutely no inclination, potential for everything, and even things we couldn't even conceive of. The Ratzon Elyon is, in the end it turns out, he wants Dafka 10 Sfidas, and the end it turns out what the Ratzon is. But in the gather of Giloi, it's not manifest there. So he brings here from the Pasuk, Kel Elikim Havaya Dibir Vikar Oretz. An interesting order of the Shemus here. Whatever translation, God, Lord, the Eternal One spoke and called to earth. Again, it's talking about Hashem governing creation, the governance of creation. So the Tzemach Tzedek explains, this is all Lifnei HaTzimtzum, all these dargis. And Kel appears first, because Kel is Gilui. Noir Insof, at the very outset. And that's why it appears before Shem Elikim. And Shem Elikim, then is the Tzimtzum. Then Havai is the creative force. Okay, so then now the next paragraph. It's all to say, what's he saying? This is what he's saying one thing here, that all starts with chesed, with Gilui, and that dominates every stage thereafter. It's all for what? He wants to bestow and reveal himself to us. And therefore, even this next paragraph, even the Yisavas itself, that the Yisavas itself begins with Kodem HaTzimtzum. The first step in actually Tzavos is Tzimtzum, like it says, at the outset that there rose in his thought to create Midas Adin. Chassidus says this is not he changed his mind, but that's Tchilas HaMachshava. That is the first step. So that too is Giloi. 2 reasons. Number 1, in addition to the fact that why is there Tzimtzum? In order there should be a Giloi. B, the Tzimtzum itself is an active Giloi. And we gave the two Masholim suggested. The Maimon gives a mashal for the second thing. Namely, a father who gets down and is to the world of his child, complete Tzimtzum, that is not in order to, that is an active Gilui. He's relating to the child on his level. The first motion, when we say Tzimtzum, B'shvil HaGilui, is maybe I'm suggesting he doesn't bring it. But based on what it says elsewhere, is the moshel of the Rav. He contracted the seichel in the story. So b'shvil hagilui, that they should work through the story and then discover the teaching. That's one level, one indication of how the tzimtzum. You have the papers, is b'shvil hagilui. The second moshel of the Rav is the tzimtzum itself is active chesed. So the whole point of it all is that there should be the tachten. There should be a likus revealed lamata the way it was before the tzimtzum, and even higher than that, dir lo yizbarach latzimusay. So the whole kavan is gilui. At the end of last week's shir, we just added, an nekudim, an insight which I'll repeat again. I don't know if you heard it. the kavan is not merely that should be nizgala lamata, the oir, the chesed that was nizgala at the outset. In other words, the oir bligvul, but atzmus. And how is that done? How does this happen? Because through avodah we reveal that gvul and elam haza and the tachten is all him, and that is a greater shleimus of the revelation of atzmus. Why? Because Eira Bligvul has kind of an inherent virtue. So it's the Abish to reveal infinite power, but you're impressed with infinity. When you look at, when we finally reveal that Gvul Keichad Gvul is all him, there's nothing impressive about Gvul. It per se, it expresses the truth of Atzmus more than Bligvul. It's taket from inside the Abish, there's no difference. So the Abish Bligvul Gvul is all him. But he created, because he wants this kavanah of dir b'tachtonim, that first there should be Eira Bligvul. He doesn't first manifest Gvul and Bligvul equally. He manifests Chesed Gilui Bligvul. That's revelation, and that thereafter, that becomes virtue. Big is more virtuous than small, and Bligvul is certainly more virtuous than Gvul. So there's a virtue in Bligvul. So, but then comes the whole chiddush. No, there's no virtue to anything. And where is that? Nizgala, it's dafkin gvul. A simple motion, which we've given before. There's two kinds of ministers, imagine. So the one minister that you meet is brilliant, devoted, completely bottled, betachlis to the king. His whole life is the king, and he's this brilliant minister, whatever portfolio he has. So when you talk to this fellow, they're not lost on you, of course, that he's the king's minister, but he himself is impressive. You cannot help by the king's minister, but he's worthy to be the king's minister. Because the king would appoint an idiot savant, an idiot, as his minister. He's appointed to the cabinet. He represents me, no less. Now, you talk to him, all you're thinking is the melech. Like, why? Wow, the melech. There's nothing impressive about him. His whole metzius is the melech, dafka because he has no mila. That's the pshat, that the oir light conceals blinded by the light. The oir itself conceals atzmus in a sense, because of the mila of it. Oir says, Giloi. Oir looks, malachim, Elamists look down here and they say, terrible. Ma enish, kisas keren, the malachim protest. Why would you even want to have to deal with? There's no mila here, because they're locked into the world of Giloi, of milas, by divine design. They learn the hard way that no, it's not about milas, it's about absolute truth, and he's equally expressed in the most finite expression, no less than the biggest Giloi. And that's what we teach Ishtal. What's the pshat that we elevate Ishtal Shalos? That Ishtal starts to learn that its own mila is not because of its own virtue, not impressed with its own mila. Its own mila is because Atzmus chose to reveal itself this way, and no less than in absolute gvul. That's the bittul that we bring through avodah to Ishtal Shalos, the connection to Atzmus. In other words, that the minister, nothing was ever impressed with himself, but to some degree, this is his mitzvah. He is a wonderful fellow. He's a devoted, all the accolades. But he feels the bittul of the simple servant that can't believe that he was appointed the king. He lives that the same way that the simple guy does, because that's Giloi Atzmus. It's the melech alone. That's what we're saying here. So the kavanah is there should be the Giloi lamata, not just the Giloi of the Eir Sof Lamayla and dissolve us and we're a state of bittul and wow. But no, Atzmus is this Gala Lamata, the true Giloi of the Eibishter himself, and that means that here is the Dira. Adanab, the Dira is Dafka here. The Kreyach HaGvul is Megala, the Shleimus of Atzmus. And then it goes even deeper, even Cheshach and even Avedis and everything, things like that, the furthest through Tshuva, it goes even deeper and deeper, the same pattern, Dafka. Where you think it can't be, it's impossible, here too. This is why Tshuva is hiding the tzaddik, because he's Megala, the shleimus of nothing outside of him more than the tzaddik does. Even the Aveda is ultimately all the Kavanda, and it's a great, at the end, therefore it's a greater Giloi for the tshuva that it brought to.
Is it reasonable to say that this understanding is the reason why this is starting from the Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov loved a simple person in a time where Rosh Yeshivas and
100%. That's, yeah. That's, listeners didn't hear, but the whole Chassidus began with this revolution, starting with Yidden. The attention paid and to simple Jews that the scholars found not just difficult to understand, but in the front to the holiness of Torah is an Amoritz. Just by the way, just to throw this up, because I'm reading this, a lot of this is news to me. I encourage you if you can get this. There's a new series of books called Historical Sketches. So I'm going through them, slowly, a page or two at night, 3. So what I'm reading now is historical sketches on of the Alter Rebbe. I'm just in the introduction. It's all from the Friedrich Rebbe's writing. It is shocking. It's shocking. I don't want to say on the tape now and the stuff, but what Chassidus endured in its early days, and it's to the extreme that you would not. Inside, it's the credit of Chabad and Lubavitch. We don't talk about this. We don't trumpet it, but it's in the history and what the Alter Rebbe, the revolution the Alter Rebbe accomplished for Russian Jewry, embracing their standards and how he did so. It's just amazing. I personally get very aggravated because in the history books, I'm not going to mention names in public and publishing houses that write the history of Chassidus and so on. This is completely ignored, glossed over, and distorted. The whole history of Chassidus. I'll just tell you a story. This can go out there. I don't care. My brother tells me Ruvi met Beryl Wine, who's he's the historian of Art Scroll. It's not about this subject, but related. So in the history of Yiddishkeit in America, he virtually ignores the Friedrich Rebbe and the contribution of Lubavitch in North America or anywhere. She's writing the history of the modern world. So he asked him, how could you do such a thing? You're a historian. His answer was, Lubavitch writes chronicles their history. That was the answer. He couldn't say it's not true. But I'm not writing about it because you guys, you write about your history. That is mind-boggling. You're a historian. There's an integrity here of giving the truth to your reader about the period you're writing. That's the mandate. Ignored, just dismissed. And likewise, Chassidus. The Vilna Gaon, the Alter Rebbe, the real story, not there. And I'm telling you, I'm shocked. I'm shocked reading this biographical sketch, as they call it. The extent, and it's way more how the Reform movement started that I knew, and I've shared this with you. Yeah, I got distracted. Go further. Again, to the credit of Chabad, that we don't. This is not what we're trumpeting. This is not our shlichus. On the other hand, the Friedrich Rebbe said this should be published and has to be known, not just because for history. It has to be known. Emes has to be known. Anyway, if you have a chance to read it, it's really like read the paragraph again. This actually happened. All right, Shoin, back to the Maimer. Now, you can go a few minutes, do a few lines, and then we want to finish at 7:00. Who's davening Shachas today? Moishe. We have to know before, so we can get things going. So you can be on time for school. That's if
you Tuesdays, right?
Yeah.
Activity Mondays.
Okay.
So you have Thursday.
Yeah, the Thursday.
Okay, so we will continue, I say, tomorrow.